from eFloorball.net, and today I'm going to give you some advice on how to choose a floorball blade. Some players might think that you choose a blade based on the position that you play, but that's not necessarily true. It more comes down to what type of player you are, and do you shoot a lot in a game, and if so, what type of shot do you utilise the most? First of all, there are different reasons to buy a new blade in the first place. One is that your blade is broken and you now need a new one. And the other one is that the stiffness of the plastic will wear out over time. So the longer you have a blade, the softer it will get. So it's important to update your blade every now and then. There's some criteria to go through when choosing a floorball blade. And the first and most obvious one is whether you'll play with the blade on the left side of your body or the right side of your body. Once you work that out, you can start looking at different categories of blades, and they're effectively fairly straight blades, mostly used by playmakers who tend to use their technique and passes more than their shots. Slightly more curved blades, also used predominantly by playmakers who shoot a little bit more. And finally, blades with a lot of curve and concavity, mostly used by players who shoot a lot. Before we move on, I'd like to clarify what concavity in a floorball blade is. If we take a look at Salmon Hawk, you can see that it's fairly curved that way, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's got a lot of concavity. You could bend a Unihawk player blade the same way, but the concavity would remain. The curvature of the floorball blade is basically how curved the bits of the plastic are inside of the blade. If we take a look at Salmon Hawk, then we can see that the bars inside the blade are quite curved. If we compare that to Unihawk player, then we can see that these bars aren't as curved. It's a much straighter blade. So the concavity on Salmon Hawk is much greater than on player. A lot of concavity on a floorball blade usually helps with sweeper shots and slap shots, and is slightly less easy to control when you dribble and pass. So whether you shoot a lot or if you pass or dribble a lot makes a big difference when you choose a blade. If you mostly pass and dribble your way around the field, then a floorball blade with less concavity will make everything easier for you. And vice versa, if you shoot a lot in a game, then a blade with a large concavity will help you out a lot. There are other things to take into consideration when you choose a floorball blade, such as blade stiffness and blade material. Floorball blades are made out of plastic, and there are different types of plastic that you can use when you compose a floorball blade. It used to be only two different types of plastic: polyethylene, which is slightly stiffer, and polypropylene, which is slightly softer. But now we have a third one, which is still polypropylene, but it's slightly stiffer than your regular polypropylene plastic, which means that it's somewhere in between PE and PP, making it the most versatile material on the market because it's stiff enough to hold up for harder slap shots, but it's still soft enough to feel good when you control and dribble and pass the ball. These three different types of plastic have different characteristics and are suitable for different types of players. Polyethylene tends to be better for players who shoot a lot, and particularly slap shots, because it's harder and stiffer. A disadvantage with this type of plastic is that your technique won't necessarily be as good as with a softer type of plastic, but that's also a personal preference. Polypropylene Titan is the name of the plastic by Unihawk, which is somewhere in between polypropylene and polyethylene, so the slightly stiffer polypropylene. It's got other names with other brands, and you'll find all the information about the different materials on eFloorball's webpage and on all the product pages. Well, a regular polypropylene is, as I've said, slightly softer, but the level of softness you achieve in regular polypropylene will help your technique even more. And if you're a player who mostly dribbles and assists other players, then that won't necessarily be a problem for you. It might actually benefit you even more to go for regular polypropylene rather than a slightly stiffer one. How do you know what material the blade is made of? Well, on our webpage it'll say what plastic every single blade is made out of. I've got two blades here that are a perfect example of stiffness in floorball blades. We've got Unihop Player and Player Plus. Player Plus was developed for players who loved playing with Player, but found it slightly too soft in the moment of the shot. If you take a look at other blades, for example, I've got Floorbee Jets here, you can see that in the heel it's slightly thick and it follows down towards the very tip of the blade. So that's a good indicator that it's a rigid and stiff blade in the moment of the shot. If you compare that to, say, Unihop Player, it's got a slightly thinner and not as long bottom. So there are certain things you can look for in a blade when you try to determine how well it'll hold up when you shoot slap shots. Salmon Hawk is another good example of a very rigid blade because it's got a very thick heel as well as plastic bits within the bars in the top. And the middle bar has been reinforced with extra bits of plastic. Another good indicator that it's a blade that'll hold up well in slap shots. If you then look at the frame of the blade, you can see that it's slightly thicker than compared to Unihop Player. That's also another good indicator that it's a blade that'll hold up well when you shoot slap shots. So the stiffness is very crucial when you shoot slap shots and wrist shots, which is why it's very important for you to determine what type of player you are before you choose a new blade. Quite often brands will call these different types of plastic soft, medium or hard. Now that we've gone through the different types of materials and stiffness, it's quite easy for us to figure out what soft, medium and hard means. Softer blades are not as rigid or stiff, but they're easier for dribbling and controlling the ball, whereas medium blades are somewhere in between, which has good technique in dribbles and passing, but also hold up well when you shoot. And harder blades, you'll lose out on some control, but you'll also gain more when you shoot. Hopefully this will give you some more insight into choosing the perfect blade for you. But if you're still a bit unsure about certain aspects, then don't hesitate to contact us at eFloorball, because we are professionals and we know our way around floorball equipment. Good luck in finding the best blade possible just for you.